Hopium, Hopium, get your Hopium, Hopium, Hopium. Yes, I'm selling Hopium, folks. Although I am Bagrodamus, although I am your GM who currently is not on a team right now, although I am your GM who knows any and all things related to the bag, rumors to the bag, and more, I am now your Hopium seller. All the Hopium that you need to make it through the rest of the season, I am the person to go to. Because there are some fan bases right now that are going to need some Hopium. Dolphins fans. But we're not going to talk about them right now because we have a mega bag alert, mega bag alert, mega bag alert, mega bag alert, folks. That's right. Colton McKivitz, Jameson Williams, Amani Hooker, Christian Watson, and Zyon McCollum get paid. Cam Heyward and the Steelers find resolution. The Eagles trade for Tank Bigsby. Steelers versus Jets recap. Dolphins versus Colts recap. Giants versus Commanders recap. And Ravens versus Bills recap. All of this and more on the 93rd episode of the Football Junkies podcast, okay? I am your host with the most, all right? I am your GM who currently is not on a team right now, but don't you worry about it, all right? Don't you worry about it because I'm your chief Bagrodamus. That's right, chief, head of the table, anything and everything related to the bag, rumors to the bag, and more. But guess what? I'm all these things and more. But most importantly, the most important thing that you must remember is I am your host, Kale. This is going to be a loaded episode, so buckle up, Ravens fans, buckle up, Steelers fans, buckle up, Dolphins fans, because man, oh man, we have a lot to talk about with your fan bases. So guess what? On three, 1, 2, 3, let's lock in. All right, folks, let's get into the meat and potatoes of everything that is going on in the league right now. So, before we get into the game recaps, let's talk about these bag alerts and get that out the way. All right, so Colton McKivitz, right tackle for the 49ers, inks a 3-year, $45 million deal, $27 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $15 million a year. When we look at his stats from this past season, according to PFF, 6 penalties and allowed 2 sacks. A good deal for an above average right tackle. For someone who was drafted in the 5th round, he's doing something right. So it was only right for the 49ers to take care of him, not to mention he's not making a whole lot of money. And it's a short-term deal, meaning that if Colton McKivitz outplays this contract, he can be due for a bigger payday either by the 49ers or somebody in free agency. But if he underperforms with this contract, the 49ers can get rid of him and not take on large dead cap hits, which is fairly good. You're paying a boatload of money to Trent Williams, so he wasn't going to be making a whole bunch of money anyway. But all in all, really good deal for both sides. Now let's talk about Jameson Williams, all right? Wide receiver for the Lions inks a 3-year, $83 million deal, $67 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $27.6 million a year. When we look at his stats from this past season, 92 targets for 58 receptions, 1,001 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, and 17.3 receiving yards per reception. Now, according to Reception Perception, Jameson Williams' success rate when facing man coverage is 65.7%. When facing zone coverage, his success rate is 79.5%. When facing press coverage, 61.9%. When being double covered, his success rate is 50%. Folks, this is a really good deal for an underrated wide receiver too. Not to mention, he's only 24 years old. So by the time this deal is over with, he's still going to be in his prime. Meaning, if he tested free agency, he could be due for a bigger contract than what he's making right now. Even though right now, he's making pretty good money for a wide receiver too. Although he is a wide receiver too, that doesn't mean that he isn't productive. When Amon-Ra St. Brown is being locked up, Jameson Williams is still available. He's still making plays. He's still doing everything that the Lions need him to do and more. That's what you need sometimes. Amon-Ra St. Brown is the 1. Jameson Williams is the 2/1B if you want to have that conversation. But it's a really good deal. This is what I've been saying for the last few years. Sign shorter term contracts. Because by signing shorter term contracts, not only are you getting a lot of your money up front, you're also allowing yourself to increase your market so that when you hit free agency, guess what? You can be due for a bigger payday than what you originally got. But what do I know? I'm not a GM, all right? So Let's talk about Amani Hooker, safety for the Titans, who inks a 3-year, $48.6 million deal, $29 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $16.2 million a year. When we look at his stats from this past season, 70 tackles, 5 picks. A good team-friendly deal for a productive safety. Now, he isn't in that same realm as a Derwin James or Kyle Hamilton or Antoine Winfield Jr. or a Minka Fitzpatrick, but he is a productive safety. He has made some big plays in the last few years. So it was only right for the Titans to take care of him. Now let's talk about Christian Watson, wide receiver for the Packers, who inks a 1-year, $13.2 million deal. When we look at his stats from this past season, 53 targets for 29 receptions, 620 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, and 21.4 receiving yards per reception. Now, I know a lot of people are asking the same question. Why give Christian Watson an extension when he's still recovering from a torn ACL? A lot of that had to do because they still believe in him and that he was going to hit free agency next year. So it was only right that you keep Christian Watson because most likely you're going to lose Romeo Doubs or Dontavian Wicks in free agency. So you have to keep at least one veteran, and why not keep Christian Watson? When he is on the field, he is a baller, but clearly the Packers value him and they value what he brings to the table. So by giving him a 1-year extension, you're not tying him for the long run. You're just allowing him to get healthy again so that he can go out, increase his value, like I've been saying for these past few contracts, and prepare himself for a bigger payday. Now on to Zyon McCollum, cornerback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He inks a 3-year, $48 million deal, $35.4 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $16 million a year. When we look at his stats from this past season, 82 tackles, 2 picks. A good deal for a productive player. This is what you're supposed to do if you're a really good GM and you're good at drafting. You take care of your players. Because by doing so, it eliminates you having to go in either free agency or in the draft to fill that position. Folks, we see a lot of times, especially in that first wave of free agency, where teams will be overpaying just to fill that void. And a lot of times when they do this, it backfires and actually helps them. Because now you're in a situation where you're trying to get out of this contract. Nobody else wants to pick up the contract. So if you release him, you have to take on all this dead cap money. But if you take on all this dead cap money, it's going to affect the cap space for the next 2 years. So it's like, damn if you do, damn if you don't, essentially. But this is what separates the great teams from the bad teams. The great teams aren't always aggressive in free agency because why? A lot of the positions of need are already being taken care of internally. And those players are getting second and maybe third contracts. Whereas a bad team, they're having to waste a high draft pick, or they're having to waste 20 or 30 plus million for one player that he probably only had one good year. But let's keep this thing going. So Cam Heyward and the Steelers finally find some resolution. So the Steelers are adding $3 million in incentives, to which he can earn up to $18 million this season, but they are based off of the playoffs. So according to Steelers Now, Mike Florio broke down how these incentives work. So Heyward can earn $1.6 million if he records at least 8 sacks and the Steelers make the playoffs. But he can earn another $1.6 million if he records 11.5 sacks and the Steelers win the playoff game. While I understand that both sides found some resolution, it still didn't get the job done because these are incentives. They're not guarantees. We're fighting for guarantees this entire time. So then what was the point in you doing all of this elaborate stuff, posting stuff on your story, talking about how you don't feel valued, and every time people ask you questions, you come off as nonchalant and angry, and how you talk about you've had serious conversations with your family and whatnot? How do you go from all of this to now finding some resolution where it's not even guaranteed? That's what you were fighting for this entire time, was guarantees. It defeated the purpose of you doing all of this. And I mean the entire little media run, whatever you want to call it, that he was on, was all for nothing. And I said this to somebody on TikTok. Shout out to OAD Loon. He's a really good Steelers content creator on TikTok. Me and him went back and forth about this because my stance is this. If you're going to do all of this stuff, if you're going to talk about how you don't feel valued and you go to places where you are valued and you're talking about that you've had serious conversations with your family and whatnot, that lets me know that you're serious. That lets me know that you are not stepping on the field until some legitimate resolution is found. Not just some patchwork and just saying, hey, we're just going to give you $3 million in incentives. Not really guaranteed, but it's just incentives. No. You are shooting for guarantees. That's what every player shoots for, is guaranteed money. Because guess what? If they cut you, if you get hurt, if anything crazy happens, that guaranteed money is yours. Whereas with incentives, they're not. Because if you don't hit that mark, you don't get the money. So again, what was the point in you guys doing all of this? This could have been easily resolved prior to the draft, prior to free agency. Could have easily been resolved. So why in the world did it take from the combine all the way to the middle point of training camp to finally find out that this was happening and then go on this media run and saying, I'm not happy, you're supposed to go to places where you're valued? Let me tell you something. And I've said this before in the previous episode, and I'm going to say it again. If the Steelers didn't value you, they would have gotten rid of you, no questions asked. They did it to Troy. They did it to Hines Ward. They did it to Ben Roethlisberger. You name me any of the great Steelers. They have all done the same thing, and that is force them into retirement. They're not doing that to you. They're giving you the benefit of the doubt that they never gave to Ben Roethlisberger or Troy, and they won multiple Super Bowls. But you know, Chris Hallett from DK Pittsburgh Sports said this. For all intents and purposes, Cam Heyward should have just signed a one-year deal. So that way, he could come back to the table and get more money instead of just signing the deal that he signed last year. Because it defeated the purpose. Because it really wasn't an extension. Because when you really look at the structure of the contract, you don't have a whole lot of guarantees. Your guarantees is essentially $1 million some dollars and some change. All your money was given into roster bonuses. And even then, roster bonuses aren't really guaranteed. They could get rid of you before the roster bonus kicks in. We've seen multiple teams do it. So why are you complaining and saying all these different things? You should be worried about trying to win a playoff game, or better yet, trying to win a Super Bowl. Not trying to get $3 extra million in incentives or a couple extra dollars just so you can be in this range of defensive linemen that's getting paid a lot of money. Who cares about that? Because guess what? Out of all of those defensive linemen, the top 10 highest paid defensive linemen, I can assure you that there's less than 6 defensive linemen that have either won one Super Bowl or at least made it to their conference championship. Chris Jones, Super Bowls and playoffs. Milton Williams, he just won a Super Bowl. Nnamdi Metabuke hasn't won a Super Bowl. Aleem McNeil hasn't won a Super Bowl. Derrick Brown hasn't won a Super Bowl. Quentin Williams, Jeffrey Simmons, DeForest Buckner, none of them have won Super Bowls. DeForest Buckner has made it to the Super Bowl, but never won it. Daron Payne hasn't won a Super Bowl. So out of the top 10 highest paid defensive linemen right now, there's only 2 that have won a Super Bowl. Think about that for a second here, folks. But you got somebody, the quote-unquote leader of the team, that's complaining about he's not valued. Man, please. But let's talk about this trade. So the Eagles traded for former Jaguars running back Tank Bigsby. So the Jaguars receive a 2026 5th and 2026 6th round pick, while the Eagles receive Tank Bigsby. So this trade was made because the Eagles needed another kick returner, as Will Shipley is dealing with a rib injury. Nothing too complex, nothing to really talk about, just a routine trade to address a position of need. All right, so let's talk about these games. All right, so Steelers versus Jets recap. Let's start with them. All right, because I'm seeing a whole bunch of grown men glaze over Aaron Rodgers. One game, I see people saying, well, I guess missing OTAs really wasn't bad at all. I think Aaron Rodgers is just doing such a great job. Stop it. Just stop it. It is week 1, and we already seen people just eat up Aaron Rodgers for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All right, so let's just start. Aaron Rodgers, 30 attempts for 22 completions, 244 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 8.1 yards per attempt, and a 73.3 completion percentage, but also took 4 sacks. Jaylen Warren, 11 attempts for 37 rushing yards, 3.4 rushing yards per carry. DK Metcalf, 7 targets for 4 receptions, 83 receiving yards, 20.8 receiving yards per receptions, and 73 yards after the catch. Justin Fields, 22 attempts for 16 completions, 218 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 9.9 yards per attempt, and a 72.7 completion percentage, and only took 1 sack. Breece Hall, 19 attempts for 107 rushing yards, 5.6 rushing yards per carry, and 4 rushes of 10-plus yards or more. Garrett Wilson, 9 targets for 7 receptions, 95 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 13.6 receiving yards per reception. So here's a few junky nuggets. So according to NFL Pro, Aaron Rodgers completed 8 of 10 play action passes for 71 yards and 3 touchdowns. This was tied for the most touchdowns on play action passes in the game since 2016. So my takeaway from this game is the Steelers won, but at what cost? Because the same problems that plagued them late last year emerged in this game, which was what? Stopping the run. They essentially dedicated an entire draft into making sure that they bolster up the run game. They drafted Derek Harmon, then they get Y.A. Black and Jack Sawyer. Because why? They wanted to be better in stopping the run. And they didn't do that this game. From poor blocking, poor block shedding, and just trying to contain Justin Fields, this Steelers defense failed. And that falls on Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin because they didn't do enough to adjust to the game. And mind you, Breece Hall as well as Braylon Allen were eating. You're talking about large gaps and they were hitting them. And they were getting a first down and more almost every single time they were getting the rock. So that falls on the coaches as well as the players. That's not good enough because you're going to be going up against teams that have really good run games. You're going to go up against the Seahawks on Sunday. They have Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. So the same problems that we saw late last year were not truly fixed. Instead, they were just patched over. That's not good, folks. And that's just the defense. I haven't even gotten to the offense yet. Which, speaking of which, let's get to the offense. Now, I know everybody has been beating up on Broderick Jones. But I'm not going to be the person to do that. I'm going to be the bigger person. Let's be real here. Could Broderick play a better game? Yes. Could the Steelers have done a better job in trying to help Broderick Jones? Yes. All those things can be true. But we also have to mention that this is Broderick's first year at left tackle. So there's going to be highs and lows. So this is going to be the only way to find out if Broderick Jones is the truth or not. So they're going to let this play out. But if this continues on, if this becomes a repeated pattern for the next, 3 weeks, then the Steelers are going to have to make a move. Now, are they going to put Andres Pete at left tackle? That's a possibility. Are they going to trade for a left tackle? That's a possibility. But let's be real here, folks. Between Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu, one of them wasn't going to pan out. And it's starting to look like Broderick Jones isn't panning out. But one can ask one question. Who failed who? Was it the organization? Was it Broderick Jones? Was it coaching? Who deserves blame? Me personally, I would say everybody deserves some level of blame. Because why? You knew that drafting Broderick Jones, he was a project. And you knew that by drafting a project, there is more risk than reward, especially if you don't have proper coaching in place. Now, am I saying Pat Meyer is an offensive line guru? No. But what I am saying is this. It looks a little bit weird if Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, and Troy Fautanu look actually pretty good, but Broderick Jones is the only one that hasn't really shown anything. That's a problem. But again, and that's what happens when you draft potential over experience. I'm always going to value somebody that has experience over potential because potential isn't always going to get your foot in the door. But experience can aid you a little bit better in that transition process than somebody that's just, I'm super athletic or I'm just super raw. No. Because a lot of times what we see is a lot of teams nowadays are not developing players. They're just looking at them and just say, hey, we're going to throw you into the fire. If nothing comes out in 2 or 3 years, we're just going to find somebody else. And we see it every single year. We see it with offensive linemen. We see it with receivers, quarterbacks, running backs, you name it. We see it every single year. So I'm not surprised. But going back to this game, the Steelers' run game was just inefficient. It was inconsistent. I know a lot of people like myself was, asking the same question, which is, why was Kenneth Gainwell getting more reps than Jaylen Warren? A little bit of a head scratcher, but I guess we'll have to wait until Arthur Smith says something. DK Metcalf looked good. I wasn't really worried about DK Metcalf, but I was just more worried about, how Calvin Austin and Ben Skoranek and everybody else was going to look. But, for all intents and purposes, The Steelers' offense did look good. Okay, minus the offensive line problems, they did look good. Aaron Rodgers looked good as well. And so, yes, I'm happy for him that he got his revenge against the Jets. But I'm not going to be the person that's going to be waving pom-poms and saying, Aaron Rodgers, he's our man, he's our man. I'm not going to do that, all right? And I understand there's a lot of people that said, well, Aaron Rodgers isn't the same. He hasn't thrown anybody under the bus. Where's this version of Aaron Rodgers that's just super toxic and conniving and whatnot? People can change, all right? Relax. Let's please relax. Because I'm seeing a narrative that I'm not liking on social media with a lot of beat writers and journalists that follow the Steelers who are secret Aaron Rodgers fans. And if you're secret Aaron Rodgers fans, that's perfectly fine. But do not allow your fandom for a player cloud your judgment and analysis on his play on the field. And I'll just leave it there, because if I don't, I'm going to name drop, and I don't want to do that yet. But let's talk about the Jets. So the Jets actually played a really good game. Pass rush was just on fire from the first snap to the last, all right? Justin Fields, I would venture to say, probably had his best game by far. If you're a Jets fan, you probably have a little bit of hope this year. Because if Justin Fields played exactly how he played on Sunday for the rest of the season, I guarantee you they'll make it to the playoffs. I guarantee you they'll even win at least one playoff game. Because he did everything you needed to do. He wasn't super aggressive. He wasn't always trying to run the ball. He executed the plays. When he needed to pass, he passed. When he needed a handoff, he needed a handoff. When he needed to extend the play, he extended the play. There were a lot of times where the pocket was collapsing and he found just enough wiggle room. And he got through and he extended the play 2, 3, maybe 4 extra yards. Now, if you're the Steelers, you could have had that. But you decided that you wanted to go with the veteran in Russell Wilson. And in doing so, you got the end result. Which, in some ways, Justin Fields, I feel like, sort of took a pot shot at the Steelers, and rightfully so. So this is what he said, and I quote, "I'm just calling it what it is. They acquired all these guys in the offseason, future Hall of Famers on that side of the ball, and we put up 32, end quote." That is somebody that has had pent-up emotions for an entire season. You're talking about somebody that started off at first and then was just benched for no reason and never had a legitimate chance to reach the field again. You're talking about somebody that, despite how anybody may feel about Justin Fields' play when he was with the Steelers, he took it on the chin and he was a professional about it. Whereas somebody else was leaking out information to the media talking about, oh yeah, I had problems with Arthur Smith. Yeah, I didn't really like his offense. And we was actually butting heads a lot because I wanted to do this and he wanted to do that. You didn't see that with Justin Fields. But my hat's off to Aaron Glenn for a really good game plan. He played a lot of man coverage, limited DK Metcalf's effect on the game, while at the same time creating a lot of pressure on Aaron Rodgers. There was a lot of times where Aaron Rodgers had to use the quick game just so he can avoid getting sacked. Will McDonald was doing his thing against Broderick Jones, as well as Michael Clemens. Michael Clemens was creating a lot of pressure on Broderick. And shout out to Tanner Engstrand for a really good offensive plan to combat against the Steelers' defensive line. I mean, it literally looked like Elijah Vera Tucker was on the field. If you would have told me Elijah Vera Tucker didn't play that game, I would have called you a liar. Because they were running the ball so well and the Steelers didn't have an answer for it. Not to mention, Alofa Shanu and Armin Membu was actually holding their own against Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt. Overall, although the Jets did lose, there's a lot of promise with this team. There's a lot of promise with both of their tackles. There's a lot of promise with that defense. I think it's only up for here if you're a Jets fan. Now let's go to the Dolphins and Colts, because I think they need a lot of hopium right now. Because man, oh man, Dolphins fans, woo, they are going through it, man. It is horrible for them, but we're going to get through it. So Tua Tagovailoa, 23 attempts for 14 completions, 114 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, 5 yards per attempt, and a 60.9 completion percentage, as well as taking on 3 sacks. Devon Achane, 7 targets for 55 rushing yards, 7.9 rushing yards per carry, and 2 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Tyreek Hill, 6 targets for 4 receptions, 40 receiving yards, 10 receiving yards per reception. Daniel Jones, 29 attempts for 22 completions, 272 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 9.4 yards per attempt, and a 75.9 completion percentage. Jonathan Taylor, 18 attempts for 71 rushing yards, 3.9 rushing yards per carry, and 2 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Michael Pittman, 8 targets for 6 receptions, 80 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 13.3 receiving yards per reception. So here's a few junkie nuggets. So according to NFL Pro, when under pressure, Tua failed to complete any of his 3 passing attempts but threw 2 picks from a clean pocket. Tyler Warren played 33 snaps at tight end, 9 in the slot, 6 in wideout, and 2 snaps in the backfield. When throwing outside the numbers, Daniel Jones completed 10 of his 13 attempts for 160 yards and a touchdown. So my takeaway from this game is the Dolphins have to do something to save their season. Because right now, the fans are just done with them already. And this is only the first game, folks. It'll be different if this was the 5th or 6th game. No, this is the first game of the season, and everybody is just done with it. From the offense looking sloppy, to Tua just making costly turnovers and fumbling the ball, to just everybody just not being on the same page. I don't know what was going on, but this team just was completely dysfunctional. Tyreek Hill was having tantrums on the sideline. Tua looked like a deer in headlights. Nobody was on the same page. And it seemed like as the game progressed, the Colts realized that, listen, we got them in the bag. We can just do a few different things. And that's exactly what they did. Lou Anarumo was disguising different coverages. So I know there was like a few plays where he made it seem like it was a 0 blitz, but in actuality, it wasn't 0 blitz. The Dolphins just didn't have an answer. And at this point, if you're the Dolphins, well, specifically Stephen Ross, how long is it going to take for you to make this decision? Because right now, Mike McDaniel cannot coach this team. At this point, I think it's just best that you just blow up this team. Because this team hasn't gone anywhere. Outside of that 1 year where they put up those crazy numbers against the Broncos and they were super fast and couldn't nobody really stop them, they haven't really done anything. They made it to the playoffs. They faced the Chiefs. We can't take the cold. It's too cold outside. What are we going to do? It's too cold outside. We can't handle physicality. This is a team, and Omar Kelly has said this. Shout out to Omar Kelly. He has said this multiple times on the Dolphins Collective, which if you're a Dolphins fan, you should listen to that, and on the Miami Herald. This team cannot take physicality. This team strays away from physicality. I don't know what it is, but if you're Chris Greer, I don't even know how you still have a job, because this roster is not a competitive roster. This offensive line is not good enough to protect Tua. You know that Tua has a concussion problem. So why wouldn't you try to make at least 2 or 3 significant investments into the offensive line? Because if you don't, guess what's going to happen? Tua's going to get another concussion, and now you're trying to figure out what you're going to do moving forward. Granted, you traded for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Okay, cool, but he's just one person. Your corners are bad. Your pass rush didn't do anything, even though you acquired Matthew Judon. What is the bright spot on this team that you can say that's something that we can build off of? Because right now, there is nothing positive to say about the Dolphins. They have not done enough to say, hey, we are a legitimate team. I would make a strong guess, if I was a betting man, that this team wins less than 5 games this year. Now, if I'm someone like a Minkah Fitzpatrick, I want out. If I'm someone like a Jalen Phillips, I don't even want to touch this team. If I'm anybody that is due for a contract, I want out. Now, speaking of which, there has been some rumblings, according to Mike Florio, that he's talked to people and that Tyreek Hill could be on the move soon, and that the Chiefs or the Steelers are, 2 of the teams that everyone is thinking about that he's probably going to go to. Let me be honest here, folks. And this is directly at Steelers fans. If all of you guys are saying that, this is the year we can win a Super Bowl, then go and get Tyreek Hill then. Go and get Tyreek Hill. Because all I keep on seeing is a whole bunch of people saying, well, he has a whole bunch of off-field problems. Didn't nobody say anything about Cam Sutton? Everybody was quiet when Cam Sutton signed with the team. Didn't nobody say anything. Everybody was lip shut when Cam Sutton signed with this team. And we all know what he did. And those weren't allegations. Those were documented. Documented. Whereas with Tyreek Hill, he's just going through a messy divorce that when you go through a messy divorce, a lot of things that were either kept hush-hush or potential allegations are all going to come out. That's all that it is. I get it. He's a lot to deal with, but guess what? Sometimes when you get people like a Tyreek Hill, if you put them in the right situation, you won't hear a peep out of them. But that's what happens when there's no structure in the locker room. That's what happens when there's nobody that's going to hold him accountable. We are now starting to see that there really is a legitimate rift between him and Tua. And honestly speaking, he brought this on himself because why? You cannot go on a live stream or just better yet, public platform and just throw your quarterback under the bus every single chance that you get. If that's how you feel about Tua, keep it behind closed doors. Let it be something that you talk about while you're on the way to the barbershop or while you're on the way to Disney World or something. Don't go on somebody's live stream and say, oh yeah, man, I could play for maybe about 2 or 3 other quarterbacks than my quarterback. You can't do stuff like that, bro. Because guess what? Now that this regular season has started, you don't have no real connection with Tua. Tua ain't really rocking with you. But let's talk about the Colts. So Daniel Jones actually had a really good game. And let's be real here. If Anthony Richardson did exactly what Daniel Jones did on Sunday, he would be the starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. That's all he had to do. You don't have to be Superman. You don't have to play like Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady or every great quarterback. All you have to do is just execute. If you execute, you will always have a seat at the table. And that's exactly what Daniel Jones did. Ran the ball a little bit, passed the ball. Clearly, he has a really good connection with Tyler Warren because Tyler Warren came out guns blazing. I mean, from playing as a fullback to a slot to a tight end, he was just doing it all. And that was great to see. This offense was very productive. And I think this is what Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen have been looking for. I think there's a lot of promise to this offense. I think there's a lot of promise to this team as a whole. As long as Daniel Jones maintains this type of play, they will have a legitimate chance to make it to the playoffs this year. Now, as far as the defense, that secondary was cooking. Cam Bynum, Charvarius Ward, Xavier Howard, cooking. That pass rush, Latu, Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner, cooking. Every aspect of this Colts team was cooking. And what great way to celebrate the life of Jim Irsay than with a dub. Now let's talk about this Giants and Commanders game. So Jaden Daniels, 30 attempts for 19 completions, 233 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 7.8 yards per attempt, and a 63.3 completion percentage, as well as taking on 3 sacks. Ja'Cory Merritt, 10 attempts for 82 rushing yards, 8.2 rushing yards per carry, 1 touchdown, and 3 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Deebo Samuel, 10 targets for 7 receptions, 77 receiving yards, 11 receiving yards per reception, and 42 receiving yards after catch, Russell Wilson, 37 attempts for 17 completions, 168 passing yards, 4.5 yards per attempt, a 45.9 completion percentage, and took 2 sacks. Russell Wilson, 8 attempts for 44 rushing yards, 5.5 rushing yards per carry, and 1 rush of 10 plus yards or more. Malik Neighbors, 12 targets for 5 receptions, 71 receiving yards, and 14.2 receiving yards per reception. So here's a junkie nugget. So according to NFL Pro, Abdul Carter played 65% of defensive snaps in the first half and then 41.4 snaps in the second half. In 25 pass rushes, Abdul Carter generated 3 pressures and half a sack. When facing 4 or less pass rushers in dropback, Jaden Daniels completed 16 of 21 passes for 204 yards and a touchdown. Now, Jaden Daniels completed 3 of 9 passes for 29 yards when facing the blitz. Deebo Samuel caught 7 of 10 targets for 77 yards. 6 of those catches for 73 yards were between the seams. So a few takeaways from this game. For starters, the Giants' pass rush has a lot of upside and is going to be a problem in the future. The Giants' offense is very stagnant with Russell Wilson. The Commanders' O-line needs time to mesh. Commanders' offense as a whole is going through some growing pains, and rightfully so. The Commanders' right tackle really couldn't stop the bull rush. Debo's route running, explosiveness, and yak ability has definitely returned. And is it too early to possibly bench Russell Wilson? Granted, I understand Brian Daboll has already said that he will start in week 2, but at some point, Brian Daboll is going to have to make a change because this offense was very stagnant. He didn't have a connection with Malik Neighbors. They couldn't run the ball well. And you can see that his play is starting to decline a little bit. Because remember, in Russell Wilson's heyday, he relied a lot on his athleticism because it was his athleticism that allowed him to extend the plays. So now that that's gone, all you have is the moon ball. And even then, you can't really use the moon ball every single time. You just can't do it. So at some point, Brian Daboll is going to have to do something with this offense because this offense was just downright atrocious. And Malik Neighbors was trying so hard not to crash out, but you can see in his face, it's like, bro, what are we doing? Nobody is really getting the ball. Nobody is making any big plays. We're not putting points on the board. What are we doing? And rightfully so. If you're Brian Daboll, you're going to have to make a decision to save your job. I understand Russell Wilson is the quote-unquote veteran, but you may have to put Jackson Dart in. And I guarantee you, if you do put Jackson Dart in, this offense will look a whole lot better. Now, I understand that Andrew Thomas didn't play this game, but, man, that offensive line, a little bit shaky, just a little bit of a problem. Now, I will say this. For any Commanders fan that may be complaining about how the offense was just stagnant and they wasn't as explosive as how they were last year, give it some time. Remember, they brought in Laramie Tunsil, Deebo Samuel. They're trying to rework Terry McLaurin in. So all of this is going to take some time. Now, I will say this. If you're the Commanders, you have to find a way to negate these elite defensive lines. Because Brian Burns and Kevon Thibodeau and even Abdul Carter at times, they was creating a lot of pressure and they were getting after Jaden Daniels. So you have to find a way to do something. Whether that means you have to start playing in 12 or 13 personnel, or you have to add in a tight end to possibly chip block. You have to do something to slow down these elite pass rushers, because if you don't, Jaden Daniels is going to get squashed. But I will say this. The Commanders' defense, it's going to take some time for them to really start cranking, but I think they showed a little bit of some promise. As far as the pass rush, I think there's something there, but I think it's going to take a while for them to really hit their peak. Same thing with the secondary as well, but if you're the Commanders' defense, is there another addition that you need to make to really solidify this defense? Because granted, you have Von Miller, you have Frankie Louvu, you have Deron Payne, you have Johnny Newton, you have Marshawn Lattimore, who's now healthy, you have Trey Amos. You have a lot on this team. But is there something else you need to do to really solidify this defense? But only time will tell. Now let's talk about the last game, and that is the Ravens and the Bills. So Lamar Jackson, 19 attempts for 14 completions, 209 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 11 yards per attempt, and a 73.7 completion percentage. Derrick Henry, 18 attempts for 169 rushing yards, 9.4 rushing yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, and 5 rushes of 10-plus yards or more. Zay Flowers, 19 targets for 7 receptions, 143 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 20.4 receiving yards per reception. Josh Allen, 46 attempts for 33 completions, 394 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 8.6 yards per attempt, and a 71.7 completion percentage. James Cook, 13 attempts for 44 rushing yards, 3.4 rushing yards per carry, 1 touchdown, and 1 rush of 10-plus yards or more. Keon Coleman, 11 targets for 8 receptions, 112 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 14 receiving yards per reception. Pardon the interruption, but this is your GM, your Bag Road Dominus, here to talk about RSS.com, all right? So if you guys already don't know, I am a RSS.com affiliate, and so I just want to tell you for just a quick moment about why you should choose RSS.com. So me personally, on my journey of podcasting, I was looking at different platforms just to find the right place. And I looked here, I looked there, I looked everywhere, but I checked out RSS.com, and it was the best decision I ever made. From low prices to interactive analytics to as well as helping you with your distribution. RSS.com does it all. Not to mention, they just started a Slack channel where you can network and interact with other podcasters and even get some insightful tips on how you can increase your podcast even more. Also, RSS.com just launched their paid ads program. So now you can get paid for posting your content. Not to mention, all you have to do is just have 10 downloads and you're qualified for it. Who would want to get paid for doing something that they're passionate about doing? So head on over to rss.com. I will be attaching my RSS affiliate link within the description. When you click on that link, I will be able to receive some compensation for it. And with that compensation, I will be able to give you guys a better product. A lot of that money will go towards upgrading the microphones, computers, new subscriptions for more analytical information that we can use for future podcasts, all of that and more. Thank you for your support, and thank you RSS.com for making me an affiliate. Now back to the good stuff. So a couple takeaways from this game. So for starters, the Ravens pass rushers couldn't get home. The Bills are starting to use more pre-snap motions. The Ravens need more lightning than thunder in the run game. The Bills were stacking the box while playing man coverage. The Ravens missed Patrick Ricard's blocking. The Bills were disguising a lot of their coverage packages. The Bills secondary is still a question mark unless they bring in someone. The Bills were continuing to keep Joey Bosa on the left side instead of switching him with Gregory Rousseau, especially when you saw Lamar continuing to go on that side. We all know that Joey Bosa isn't fast enough to go after Lamar Jackson. So why wouldn't you at least switch him? The Ravens need to rotate their interior defensive line. Give Aeneas Peebles a chance. The Ravens need to be more aggressive. More 5-man instead of 4-man fronts, please. Please. This was a very winnable game for the Ravens, and you choked. You flat out choked. It wasn't because of the refs. It wasn't because of a fumble. It wasn't because nobody catch the ball. You choked. You had the game in your pocket and you choked it away. And this continues to be a problem for the Ravens. So according to Josh Dubois of the Associated Press, there's only 3 coaches to lose twice in the regular season when leading by 15 plus points at the start of the fourth quarter. John Harbaugh, Webb Eubank, and Marion Campbell. John Harbaugh leads them all in 55 opportunities. I'm sorry, that's unacceptable. At some point, you have to win the big games because you know that you're either going to have to face the Chiefs or the Bills to make it to the Super Bowl. And the fact that you had this game and all you had to do was just secure the lead, but you choked it away, lets me know that you are not the coach that is going to take the Ravens to the Super Bowl. I think at this point, we need to have an honest conversation about the Ravens and John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh's time has ran out. I understand that he's a good coach. I understand that he does a lot for the Ravens. But at this point, brother, you can't float. You continue to choke away opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. From having the number 1 seed and the Chiefs coming to Baltimore. You could have won that game. You didn't do it. You could have won last year. You didn't do it. You could win this year, and you probably won't. At some point, you cannot point the finger at everybody else. You have to point the finger at yourself. This lackadaisical, reserved play calling in the most important times of the game is going to cause you to lose more than win. And we see it every single year. We talk about the Ravens every single year saying, oh yeah, they're a Super Bowl team. This could be the year that they win the Super Bowl. And every single year they choke on a Popeye's biscuit. So at some point, someone's going to have to say it. John Harbaugh may not be the guy. And that's perfectly fine. The Eagles went through with Andy Reid. All those years, the Eagles were super competitive. But when the lights were too bright, they choked. So at some point, they had to make a move. So they let go of Andy Reid. Andy Reid went to the Chiefs. They started the Chiefs dynasty. The Eagles, they won a Super Bowl. And then they went back and they won another Super Bowl. So at some point, you have to be honest and you have to say, you know what? I think it's just time for us to go our separate ways. If I'm a player, I'm calling for a players only meeting. No phones, no tablets, no nothing. Because nobody needs to know about this. And they just need to have a heart-to-heart with every single person in that room. Because everything is there. You have the team. You have the weapons on both sides of the ball. And you mean to tell me this team hasn't at least made it to 1 Super Bowl? 1? It cannot be just the Chiefs and the Eagles just winning the Super Bowl every single year. At some point, somebody from the AFC is going to have to do something because it's always been Patrick Mahomes. So who's it going to be? Who is going to be the person that's going to hold John Harbaugh accountable? Somebody needs to do it because clearly he is not doing enough. You know that Daniel Falele is a problem. I purposely looked at the all-22 version of that game. Daniel Falele is not a good guard. I'm sorry. He is going to lose you more games than win them because I guarantee you if you go up against the Chiefs, Chris Jones is going to be his dance partner. And he's shown that he can't do it. And you knew that Daniel Falele can't do it. And instead of you trying to get somebody in free agency, you just say, you know what? We're okay with what we have. No, you cannot do that. And that's exactly why you guys continue to choke year after year after year after year. Because you know why? You are complacent. You want to try to give people a chance. You cannot do that. You are in a Super Bowl window. If you are not performing, you got to go. I love you. You'll be a part of the Ravens documentary. You'll be part of that whole ceremony when they celebrate the team and whatnot. But as far as all that extra rigmarole, hey man, you got to go. We got to bring in somebody else. Simple as that. The pass rush needs more juice, and you need to stop running it with Derrick Henry. There is no reason why Keaton Mitchell should have been on that field because everybody knows how to counter Derrick Henry. Stack up the box and just make sure you try to tackle him and slow him down. That's it. That's all you got to do with Derrick Henry. Whereas with the Keaton Mitchell, he got speed. He has receiving ability. There's more that you can do with him than a Derrick Henry. But you have your head so far up your ass that you don't realize that. So until the players want to actually have a heart-to-heart conversation with John Harbaugh, they will never experience winning a Super Bowl. They will never experience the feeling of being a winner. Because your coach likes to sit on his hands and just say, you know what? I'm okay with where we are. We don't need to be aggressive. I understand it's the 2-minute warning. We don't need to be aggressive. Y'all literally just justify why Josh Allen won the MVP. Think about that for a second. Here you have a defense. Really good defense, right? Really good defensive prospects. Mike Green, the Green Machine. Adafio Way, KVN. You know that KVN is going to take a while before he starts cranking. So why don't you put Mike Green in? Why don't you put these Peebles in? You need to throw offenses off guard. Because if you don't, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get smoked like how Josh Allen just smoked you. So when you go up against the Chiefs and you choke and you lose again and everybody's looking at you with the side eye, don't be pointing fingers at anybody else. There's no excuse this year. And remember what I've been saying for the past 2 years. The two things that would stop the Ravens from winning it all is injuries and self-inflicted wounds. And Sunday proved exactly what I said. Self-inflicted wounds will prevent the Ravens from winning a Super Bowl. There is no reason under the sun that this team should be losing like this. Now, if the game was super close, okay, fine. I'm not going to complain about it because these are two really good teams. But the fact that you allowed the Bills to make a comeback in such a small amount of time lets me know that you, sir, are not the head coach for the Ravens. Instead, all you are is just a cheerleader with a clipboard. But I'm going to end this episode here. If you guys like what you are listening, please make sure you guys download the episodes. Make sure you guys share the episodes with somebody else who loves football just as much as you do, all right? For my audio listeners, you can follow us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and anywhere and everywhere that you listen to podcasts because we are there, okay? Now make sure you guys leave a 5-star review, okay? Please, I would really appreciate that. Now for my YouTube people, like, share, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on any of the games that I've covered. Let me know your thoughts on any of the things that I have covered. Am I right? Am I wrong? Let's talk about it. Let's debate about it, all right? Now, when you are on our YouTube, Football Junkies Pod, there is a link tree in our bio. When you click on the link tree, it will take you to anywhere and everywhere that we have Football Junkies content, whether it be our Instagram, our TikTok, Blue Sky, X, you name it, all of that is there in our link tree, okay? Now for my TikTok people, Football Junkies Pod, all right? Football Junkies Pod. Clips, I know, I will post them. I have to post the old clips before I can post the new clips, okay? So just give me some time. I'm working through that, all right? Now for my Instagram people, football_junkies pod, all right? Football_junkies pod. Junkies pod is not what? It is together, not spaced, okay? It is together, not spaced. Football_junkies pod. You can follow me on X/Twitter, GMKale, all right? GMKale, Kaile, as well as on Blue Sky, GMKale, GMKAILE. As always, I hope I gave you guys the fix that you guys need. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of the Football Junkies Podcast, the best football podcast that you can listen to on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis, okay? And while you're at it, shout out to Corey from the Not That Serious podcast. Make sure you guys listen to his new sport podcast, Get It Done with 4. Get It Done with 4. It's on Spotify. It might also be on Apple Podcasts as well. Make sure you guys give him a follow as well. Shout out to OAD Loon. Shout out to him and his crew. They have a podcast as well. All you have to do is go on his TikTok page and it'll be available there. So as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. I will be watching tonight's game and we will be talking about tonight's game tomorrow, as well as previewing a few games that are going to be catching my eye for Sunday. So as always, this is your GM Kale signing out. Peace and love. Later, guys. And another thing, the Steelers need to move Keanu Benton from nose tackle. He is not a nose tackle. You need to move him at end, put Y.A. Black at nose tackle, and I think you'll see a better result. Also, hot take, truth bomb, okay? I think the Steelers should draft the number 1 tackle in next year's draft and possibly trade for a quarterback. I'm going to save that for the next episode. Peace and love. Later, guys.